Hello everybody, so we are going live today with my amazing friend Simon Alexander Ong. And if you haven't heard of him, please stay, because this guy is going to leave you feeling energized, pumped and ready to tackle anything within your life. So please do stay, because my friend Simon is absolutely incredible and his words of wisdom will literally leave you wanting to upgrade your life and become the very best version of yourself. So I can see he's here now. I'm going to invite him up and we're going to get this interview started today. Let me just see if I can get him up. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Simon, how are you, my friend?
Ryan, doing well yourself?
I'm very, very well, thank you. And it's absolutely amazing to have you here live from Brazil to share your incredible words with my audience here, because I've known you for a few years now, Simon, and I think you're an absolute inspiration, not only to me, but to everybody that gets to actually hear your incredible words, my friend. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. And whereabouts in Brazil are you, Ryan? The background's looking great there.
I'm currently in a place called Florianopolis, which is a tiny little island, sort of towards the south, I guess. But as you can see here, the weather's beautiful, an absolutely amazing place. So I've been here probably about 3 weeks now.
I love it. I love it. But no, I'm looking forward to this conversation, Ryan.
Yeah, so let's jump straight in. Like, there's no messing around. Let's just jump straight in and get involved, and we get going. So, Simon, I want to obviously share your journey and to talk about a little bit about yourself. So could you briefly share with me and the viewers here today a little bit about your life's journey? Maybe to talk about some of the things that you went through throughout your the years of, say, your 20s and 30s mainly. Talk about some of the challenges that you faced along the way, and tell us maybe what you had to do in order to get you to the place where you are today.
Sure. So I was born here in the United Kingdom to two Malaysian Chinese parents who had high hopes for me. You know, they wanted me to go to a good school, get good grades, get to a good college, and get a job that paid well, as I'm sure many parents would want for their children. And so life was very much a straight line until I hit my early 20s. But then a series of events really challenged me. The first event happened when I was 17. I lost my mum to a tragic accident, and that matured me almost overnight. You know, all of the things that I felt I wanted, I no longer wanted. So going out partying of an evening just wasn't that important anymore. And when you go through something like that, it teaches you so much about life. And then in my early 20s, I failed my second year of university. I mean, failing any year of schooling is always going to be tough to tell your parents, let alone telling Chinese parents. So you can imagine what it was like for me having to break the news to my father and the rest of the family. And then when I finished university, I started in the financial services sector at what was probably the worst possible time. It was the year before the global financial crisis swept across the planet. And the company I joined was Lehman Brothers, which collapsed into bankruptcy 14 months after I joined as a graduate. Now, even though, as you can imagine, even though it was painful at that time to go through those experiences and then to have those hopes and dreams swept away from you, from under your feet, in hindsight, Ryan, I think it was a beautiful blessing in disguise, because it really kickstarted the journey to what I now get to do today. Even though it would be a few more years after that before I would quit that industry and start life as an entrepreneur, it really started the mental journey of questioning, i.e., what did success mean to me? What sort of impact did I want to have in the world? And how was I going to go about putting this into action? So that for me was where it began, because I saw that as long as I worked for someone else, a lot of my destiny was out of my control. There would always be someone else deciding if I get the promotion, if I get a bonus, what sort of jobs I get to do, what projects I get involved in. But I knew that if I worked for myself, a lot more of that would be in my control. Not easy by any means, but far more under my control. And so when I had that inspiration, I began to read different books. I shifted the environment I spent time in. I went to seminars, I went to workshops, I worked with mentors and coaches, and it shifted my mind because I took myself out of the bubble of just finance, and I opened my eyes to what else would be possible. And I just got experimenting. I tried things, I got things wrong, I tried things again. And over time, I landed on the idea that I really enjoyed helping people. And I went to a 2-day seminar. It cost me nothing except my time. I went there on the Saturday morning. By the end of Sunday, I said to myself, I want to sign up on this coaching program and learn all about this skill. And then a few years after that, after I got my free qualifications, I went out, as many first-time coaches do, and I just started working with people one-to-one. So anybody that wanted to be coached, I'll work with you. I wanted to build my experience. I wanted to learn all I could about applying this skill in real life. And then from there, things started to open up, Ryan. I got invited to speak at different events. The speaking then led me to build my network, getting to know some incredible people. BBC News interviewed me, Sky News interviewed me. And from there, that led to me signing a book deal with Penguin in April 2020 to write my first book, ENERGIZE. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell. I'm sure we can dive into different parts of that journey throughout, but that's the journey in a nutshell.
Wow, Simon, thank you so much for sharing that with us, my friend. And what an incredible journey that you've had. Like, there's some things that you said in there that you mentioned, and I didn't even know myself. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to first start by saying, let's talk about you mentioned something there about you went out and you tried a lot of things. And you obviously you failed at things, and then you learn, you grew, you become better. But the more things you tried, the more experience that you got, and then certain doors opened up. And I like to say, like, the more steps you take on your own personal path of purpose, the clearer that the journey becomes. But many people are very scared to take those first steps, or afraid to try things out because of, say, potential failure, etc. So for anybody that's listening that wants to maybe make a change or a shift in their career or their life at all, what words of wisdom or tips could you give somebody that wants to make the change but is potentially scared or afraid to take those first steps?
The first thing I would say is not to focus on the outcome. I think that for a lot of us, the reason we get overwhelmed is because we have this idea of what we want to achieve. So let's say, just to take a very simple example, I want to run a marathon. Now, if you've never run a marathon before and you focus on finishing this marathon, even though you've never done it before, it's going to feel overwhelming. And the fear and the doubt can stop you taking any action. Instead, yes, have the idea of what you want to achieve, but then put it to one side and then break that outcome into tiny, tiny steps that will help you get there. So almost work backwards. So once you have the outcome in mind, reverse engineer the steps and focus on the smallest step that you can take now, which would be so easy, you can definitely do it. And the reason I say this is because what you want to build at the beginning of any journey is momentum. You want to build that momentum, because once you've got some momentum behind you, guess what? It's going to fill up your confidence tank. You're going to start saying to yourself, actually, if I can do this, what more can I achieve? But the thing is, you've got to start small first. So when I started to build my business, it wasn't like, okay, I want to become a millionaire overnight, because I knew that wasn't going to be possible. I mean, that's exciting, but the reality is it's going to take time. So for me, the small steps were very simple. The very first step I took was change what I read. Now, that's a step any of us can take. I was reading junk. I was reading stuff that added no value to my life. And so the very first step I could take was look at what the successful people read and change the things I read. Books, magazines, articles, newsletters. That's a very easy step. And what happens is, once you start digesting different sorts of information that inspire, educate, and empower, guess what? That's going to open up the next step. Maybe the next step is you want to go to somebody's seminar. Maybe the next step is you want to put something into action. Now, this is what's important. Start small, take the steps forward. And here's the thing, just one step forward each day. In a year from now, that is 365 steps forward. I mean, just imagine where you could be. And so the reason I think so many don't take action is because they're too fixated on the outcome. Yes, the outcome is important, but actually focus on what's the smallest action step you can take today. Not tomorrow, but today. And then you ask yourself the same question tomorrow. What small step can I take today? And again, and again, and again. And before you know it, Ryan, in a month from now, you're building that momentum. Because what comes first is courage. And as you take the courage to take these small steps, what you build is your confidence.
Wow, beautiful words there, my friend. Thank you so much. And you know, it's so true. Like courage is or confidence is the prerequisite to courage. Like you have the courage to start with, and then you build the confidence as you get going. Like the more courage that you take, as in those small tiny steps, they build and compound on top of each other, which is ultimately going to build your confidence within yourself and your own abilities. And it's so true what you mentioned there. So it's about just getting started. And I love what you said about chunking it down for those small tiny steps. So Simon, I want to go back again a step. And again, I'm just going to start by saying, so sorry to hear about your mother at such a young age, my friend. Like, wow, 17, I believe you said. And
yeah,
it's such a painful thing for anyone to go through at any age. But I can just imagine what you must have gone through, say, as a young guy there. But what I want to talk about around this is that many people, me included for a time, like, people know my story. Like, I was on my deathbed at 18 years old with absolutely zero brain activity. They wanted to pull the plug on my life support machine. And then for you, for instance, it was until your mum sadly passed away and you then reevaluated your life, and all of those things that you were doing at that moment in your life, they didn't mean anything anymore. And you thought, I don't want to do that anymore. It means nothing to me. Why do many people wait for, say, a disaster to strike to then decide to, say, design and deploy the action steps towards their desired destination? Like, why do people wait for that rock bottom or potential death or life-threatening illnesses to then say, shit, I need to really think about changing my life? Like, what's your opinion on that, my friend?
It's a good question, Wayne. You're right, because if you look at many stories in anyone's journey, often what it took for them to see things differently was either a personal tragedy or some setback that forced them to reevaluate their life. And I think that the unfortunate scenario is we forget just how short life is. You know, we all know we've only got one life, but we don't actually appreciate it. Because if we did, we would make very different choices. And so when I saw my mum pass, what it really brought to the front of my mind was the fact that life is fragile. You are not guaranteed any single day on this planet. And so all of the life lessons that came flooding into my head, the one that stood out the most was the two words, don't wait. And I realized that if I began to embrace those two words, don't wait, not only would it become the greatest antidote to regret, but it would set me on the path to fulfillment. And so I think for most people to really appreciate how short life is and to have the urgency to take action, we need a healthy dose of perspective. And to avoid having to wait for some tragedy or some scenario that forces you to reevaluate life, it is simply to put yourself into a position where you can truly feel that gratitude for simply living. So, you know, I encourage people to have a walk through a graveyard one day, go to an old person's home and speak to some of the old people there, go to a children's hospital and speak to some of the children with terminal illnesses, because what that does is it saves you from having to go through some of those things yourself, but it gives you the opportunity to not only shift your perspective of life, but to begin appreciating every single minute that you have living on this planet.
Wow, man. Again, like such powerful words you say there, and like it's so true. Like so many people, they're literally just waiting for a tragedy to then decide to change their trajectory.
Mm,
Like, but you don't have to wait. Like anyone listening, you don't have to
mm,
wait for disaster to strike to then change your life. And I love what you said about just taking a walk through a graveyard or an old
mm,
people's home. Like, not to compare your life to anybody else's, but there's so many people out there that would be begging to trade places with you, whatever
mm,
position that you're in right now. So anyone that's potentially going through, say, a challenging time in their life, or
mm,
they feel like they've hit rock bottom, or their life is over, or they could never change things around to where
mm,
they currently are, if they're going through a difficult
mm.
situation, what would you say your top one, two, three tips are for for those persons?
Well, I would share a very powerful exercise that will not only elevate your energy immediately, but it will also elevate your emotional energy and connection to life itself. And it's a simple 3-step exercise. The first step is to write down the name of somebody that you can be truly grateful for. And it could be a partner, it could be a colleague, it could be a parent, whoever it is. Write down the first person that comes to your mind. The second step is to write down why. And the key to making use of this step is to write the information down in as much detail as possible. So, for example, if you need some prompts may include: what has he or she done for you that has helped you to be a better person? What would life be like if he or she was not in your life? And so on. So really start to flesh out the impact that this person has had on your life. And then the third step is to pick up the phone and to call that person, reading out everything that you wrote in step 2. Now, if this first step is a little too uncomfortable for you, at a minimum, what you want to do is to send a voice note. The key here is that they must hear your voice, because voice carries emotion and energy. And it's not only the recipient that benefits from this exercise, it's also you as the giver. And studies have shown that when you are going through a particularly tough time, this exercise will have the most profound effect on you.
Wow, that's so beautiful to hear, because quite often, like, we don't appreciate those people that mean the most to us. And
Mm,
what is what is, say, a voice note or a quick call, a 1 minute call to
mm,
someone? Like, it doesn't take anything really out of your day. 1 minute, like, calls or texts don't cost anything
mm,
anymore, but for that person, it's going to mean so much to them. But again, like you
mm,
say, to you, you're going to know that you've told that person how much they really mean to you, because so many of
mm,
us, and again, I hold my hands up, many a times people have done stuff for me in my life, and I've almost taken it for granted,
mm,
or not told them that I appreciate them. And now I consciously try and always reach out to all of those people
mm.
that have ever helped me, because, those people were there for you once in your life, and
Yeah.
you must appreciate those people, because that's all you're going to have at the end of the day, is those people that are always there for you. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be there every single step of the
Mm.
way, but they're going to help you along your journey. So it's a very powerful exercise. So thank you so much for
My
sharing that with us,
pleasure. And,
Simon.
and, and it also is a powerful reminder for us that we never get to the top alone. That
Mm.
in any journey in life, for you to get far, you're going to need support. You're going to need people who are going to help you in some way, small or big, but that you're never going to get far alone.
No, and it's so important, like, again, to always treat people
Mm.
right on your way up, because, again, like we've heard it before, like, you never know who you might meet on your way back down. So it is very true. Like, you need to make sure you respect people and appreciate them for every
Mm.
single tip, trick, support, whatever they do to help you along your journey.
Mm.
So, Simon, just talk to us briefly then about your book that you mentioned. Tell us what, say, someone potentially reading it could
Mm.
gain from reading your book. Because you mentioned earlier about how when you wanted to upgrade your life, you had to upgrade the information that you was consuming. So,
Yeah.
talk to us about, say, your book and what someone could benefit from, say, reading your book.
Sure. So the essence of the book is that when you transform your relationship with your energy, you transform your life and career. Now, when I think about energy, I see it in 4 dimensions. You have your physical energy, you have your mental energy, you have your emotional energy, and you have your spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. Now, these are the 4 buckets, but when we typically think about our energy, we focus exclusively on the physical. So if I'm feeling particularly drained or exhausted, I might say, I need more rest, or I need to move my body more, or I need to change my diet. Those tend to be the things we think about, and those feed into our New Year's resolutions. So you will probably know that when you talk to your friends about resolutions, chances are they're talking about one of those 3 things. However, we also have to focus on our mental, emotional, and spiritual. Mental energy is our ability to focus, our ability to cultivate a powerful mindset, and to access our creative energy. Emotional energy is how we relate to ourselves and others, and spiritual energy is all about meaning and purpose. In fact, when I just stay a bit longer on meaning and purpose, if you look around people in society, what you will notice, just as I have, is that many are exhausted, not because they are physically doing too much, but one, they are doing too little of the things that bring them joy, and second, because they are running someone else's race. And so when we do that, and when we do work that is not aligned to our values or who we are, we may feel a little tension inside of us. That's when we are low on spiritual energy. But when we are high on spiritual energy, when we're doing work that is aligned to who we are, that allows us to express our gifts and our talents and our skills, what happens is that we are high on spiritual energy. We increase the probability of getting into states of flow.
You just spoke to my soul there, my friend, literally, because no, it's so true. Like, so many people say, oh, I'm exhausted for the work that I do, or it's draining me, it's stressing me out. And I was there again, like, I only ever had one career before this. I was a car mechanic for 13 years, and it used to drain me. And, you know, because my body wasn't physically drained, really. It's because I was doing too much of the work that wasn't aligned with my core, my values, my purpose. So I want to ask you now, Simon, because this is a huge question that I get all the time, and I hear many people ask this. What is the purpose of life, and how do you find your unique purpose?
Now, for me, at a high level, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. So what I mean by that is living each day with intention. If you're living each day with intention, you're living on purpose. Now, the purpose piece is something you discover as you follow your curiosities. None of us wake up one morning, except if you're in a Hollywood film, and go, Eureka, I know exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life, and this is all I'm going to do. In reality, what happens is you get clues, you get insights and ideas. You might have a conversation with someone, and you go, actually, that sounds like a career I'm interested in. Or you might go read a book, or you go to a seminar, and suddenly you have even more clues. And you take action on those clues and those curiosities, and eventually that leads you to what your purpose is. But it's up to us to follow those clues, and that's why living with intention, living on purpose, is part of the journey to arriving at that destination of knowing what our purpose is. If you don't live on purpose, if you don't live with intention, guess what? The day is going to run you, and you are going to get caught up with the business of life.
It's so true, my friend. And literally, like, the person without purpose will find pleasure in distractions. Like, if you don't know what your purpose is, you're going to be bouncing around here, there, and everywhere, doing things that don't align with your soul, with your values. And look, it's okay not to know your purpose right now, but it's not okay to not be in constant pursuit of it. And I say, like, life is really like a big food buffet restaurant. It's just about going out there and trying the flavors of life, like just trying things, because you either get one of two results. You either enjoy what you tried out, or you don't enjoy it. And you just do more of what you do enjoy and less of what you don't enjoy.
Yeah, and there's two questions that come to mind, Ryan, that can help those who may not know what their purpose is. So if you are kind of in a place where you feel stuck, or you don't feel you're doing the work that is meant for you, but you also don't know what work you want to do, then I think two questions that would be very useful is, number one, write down all of the things that you are most curious about right now. And then what you want to do is circle the things that you would be most interested to follow in order to see where that leads. And the second question is a question that I begin every day with, which is, how will I know that today will have been a productive day? And when you work from the end in mind, you begin living that day with intention.
Very, very powerful questions there. And yeah, I feel like many people just let each day go by without even asking themselves certain questions.
Mm.
I mean, the more deep you can get on the questions that you ask yourself,
Mm.
the better the answers that you're going to discover for yourself also. So, Simon, as we sort of come to an end now, there's 5 quick questions that I want to
Mm.
blast through with you, if you're happy to go ahead.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I love this part. So, number 1 is, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received and why?
Good question. So much advice I've received. I would say the one that comes to my mind as you ask that question is, your value is determined by how much more you have given to the world than you have taken from it. Because when you focus on value, money will look after itself. As a mentor of mine, Bob Berg, once said, money is simply an echo of value.
I cannot agree with you more. Like, money is a result, or it comes as a byproduct based on
Mm.
the amount of value that you provide to the world. So
Mm.
it's about having that delayed gratification, not focusing on the money as such, but focusing on the mission. Like,
Yeah.
don't focus on income, focus on impact and outcome,
Mm.
and money will naturally come towards you as a result of say having that value and that impact on the world. And I heard it once before, like someone said, if you want to make $1 billion,
Mm.
don't focus on making the billion, but focus on impacting 1 billion lives, and then just charge them $1 a piece.
It's so true, though, because I think if you break it down to its practicality, what it shows is that in every interaction you have with someone, whether it's here, whether it's with a conversation at a networking event, whether it's meeting someone online, if you are constantly seeking to add value into every conversation you have or every presentation you give, guess what? People want you in their circle. People want you to be part of their team or their circle or their group, because you are now someone of value. You are someone who brings value into every relationship. And that's what people want. They want people who can bring value.
100%, and that's when the doors say open up for your life as well.
Mm.
Once you're once you say in service of other people and
Mm.
you provide value, again, you just naturally get drawn to the people that matter most and the
Yeah.
people that are going to help improve your life. So,
Mm.
question number 2, my friend: what is the worst piece of advice that you have ever received and acted on, and what was the result?
I would say the worst piece of advice that I have received is, don't fail. Don't fail. And if you fail, you're a failure. Now, the reason I say that is not a good piece of advice is because it made me believe that success and failure were opposites. You either succeeded or you failed, and if you failed, you are a failure. And that made me see failure as an identity, i.e., I am a failure, rather than failure as an event. And what I came to realize over time, as I got wiser and as I started my own business, is actually failure is part of success. You are going to learn far more from failure than you are from your successes. And with every failure, if you are humble enough to heed the lesson, the wisdom, and the insights, it will help you come back stronger and achieve far more than you ever can imagine.
Very, very important message there. And so many people, they fail and they stop. But like, failure, I believe, is like the essential stepping stones on your path to
Mhm.
success. Like, failure is not fatal, failure is not final, but
Yeah.
failure is necessary in order to succeed. And if you're not willing to fail, then you're definitely not ready to succeed. And
Yeah.
like, fucking up in life is the first step to finding anything out. Like, you need to mess things up in order to become better, grow, and then eventually achieve or get to where you want to
And
go.
here's a good tip for people who don't have a good relationship with failure, because I think at the end of the day, all of these negatives can be transformed if you have a healthier relationship with them. And part of the journey of having a healthier relationship with something negative is to gamify the negative. So, for example, if you're looking at the next 3 months, you might say to yourself, in the next 3 months, I am going to look for as many ways to fail as I can. And then you tick off every failure you've had. Because if you do this exercise properly, number one, you make failing fun. And number two, you are going to learn a hell of a lot from the process. So just to give you other examples of how you can gamify the negative, if you find procrastination difficult and you say, well, I can't eliminate procrastination. Well, if you can't eliminate the behavior, change what you procrastinate about. So instead of procrastinating about your good habits, procrastinate about your bad habits. So when you go to the supermarket and you usually put a lot of junk food into your trolley, say to yourself before you do, maybe next week I'll put the junk food in, and then just keep procrastinating about that. So in effect, what you're doing is you still have the behavior, but you've just gamified the negative. So actually the result is something positive.
Wow, that's incredible. And I've never heard anybody say that about procrastinate on the negative. Like, that's such a fantastic piece of advice there. And I hope someone can actually take something away from that, because many people I know that follow my content are always talking about procrastination. So to flip your mindset and do it on the opposite, as in procrastinate on the negatives, is a fantastic way of thinking about it and acting as well. So thank you for sharing that with us, my friend. So now I want to ask you, I believe in life, like, a lot is about, say, learning and progressing and becoming better. Yeah, and learning new things. But an even bigger part sometimes is about unlearning what we got programmed into us as, say, young children growing up. So maybe what is something or some of the things that you had to unlearn in order to get you to where you are now?
So many things. I mean, a couple of things that come to mind that I've had to unlearn. The first obvious one is that success is determined by your job title. I grew up with this mistaken belief that if I became a banker, a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, I would be seen as successful by my family. And so that was something I had to unlearn. What I learned to be more important is not your job title, but whether you actually enjoy the work you do. Because if you enjoy the work that you do, you are going to show with vastly more energy in the form of commitment, of passion, of perseverance, of consistency. And guess what? Not only would the people closest to you notice, but everyone you come into contact will notice. Because as Maya Angelou said, people may forget who you are and what you did, but they will never forget the way that you made them feel. Another one that I had to unlearn was that I had to do everything myself. You know, I grew up with this belief that if you want I think your internet just kind of stalled for a second there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here. It did. But no, I got what you said there. And yeah, very important messages that you're sharing with us today. So the next question, you know, is obviously I probably know what you're going to talk about because it's horrendous. But what is the greatest life lesson that you learned from your most painful life experience?
So many. I'll do a quick highlight because I think there's different things I learned from different painful moments. And there were different painful moments. So I think from losing my mum, the key lesson from that was don't wait. Don't wait. Take action today because you're never guaranteed a tomorrow. The lesson I took from not basically being out of a job within the first 14 months of my very first career was simply network your ass off. Build relationships, build your profile, build your brand, and you won't have to worry about work ever again. Because I think that what I learned from having lost my job is that when you have a good reputation, when people know the value that you can bring, when you lose a job, people want you somewhere else. And so that's the lesson that I learned from that experience. And I think when I look at my entrepreneurial journey, which hasn't been smooth, by the way, I've had lots of ups and downs. But if I look at the painful moments in business, the most important lesson I got from that is to have diverse revenue streams. Have diverse revenue streams because you never know when one of those streams is going to be impacted. So to give an example, when COVID closed the economy here in the UK, when everybody had to retreat into their homes, speaking at the time was a big revenue source for me. But of course, overnight, when all the events were cancelled, my speaking revenue went to zero. But I was very fortunate that I was also coaching, I was consulting, I was advising, I was mentoring. And so these other streams helped to support me in the first few months of the COVID pandemic when I couldn't speak at any event.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people, come to the realization of that they're just one single job isn't going to support them if something like this was ever to happen again. And again, like you mentioned earlier about blessings in disguise, like for me, COVID was an absolute blessing in disguise because it made me realize, wow, I haven't been enjoying this, and at any given moment my job is at risk.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I think a lot of people just opened their eyes up. So again, another powerful message that you shared there, Simon. So the next question is, knowing what you know now, what one piece of advice could you give to your younger self?
One piece of advice I would give to my younger self. If I could only give one, it would be this. Listen to your heart over the opinions of others that you seek validation from. It may not always lead you to where you want to be, but it will always lead you to where you need to be.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, my friend. Seriously. Wow. I think a lot of people need to re-watch this and just hear just that again if they listen to anything today. But Simon, I do have one more bonus question, if it's okay to
Let's
ask
do
you.
it.
And I've started to do these on the lives now, So what is the best thing about being Simon Alexander Ong?
The best thing right now about being Simon Alexander Ong is the fact that each day, each week, each month is full of surprises. It's full of opportunities. It's full of incredible people to meet. If I look back in just the last few months, Ryan, having the opportunity to connect with the likes of Jay Shetty, speak on stage with Deepak Chopra. I'm going to Los Angeles in September for Hollywood Gala. I'm going to New York to meet some incredible people at the end of October. I have no idea where any of those things are going to lead. But for me, that is magical. Because as I said to someone recently who was worried about uncertainty, I said to them, hey, look at it a different way. When everything is uncertain, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And that's what makes life so beautiful, is that you do not know what is around the corner. Yes, there'll be challenges. Yes, there'll be setbacks. That's part of life. But at the same time, there could be some very beautiful surprises that will completely change the trajectory of your life.
And there we go. To end on that, I think it's super incredible and so true because, the magic is in the uncertainty. Like, if you look at a blank piece of paper on a wall for an artist to paint on, and it's just a white piece of paper, some people will say there's nothing there. But for the artist in their mind, this is a blank space of opportunity for them to create whatever magical masterpiece that they want. And it's the same with life. If you don't know where you're going or you're unsure, you're uncertain, that just means there's a space to be filled with anything and everything that you could possibly imagine.
Indeed. I mean, too many people are of this belief that I'll believe it when I see it. But I think for the most successful, they see it the other way. They see it like this. I will see it when I believe it. So when you believe it, you will begin to see the path forward. You will begin to see the next step, and you will begin to see what has to happen for you to move to that next level.
Wow. Simon, thank you so much for being here, my friend, today. And thank you again for just sharing your incredible, wonderful words of wisdom with everybody, because there were so many powerful things that got taken away today. So I beg anyone to rewatch this, to share it with your friends, family, etc., because you're not going to miss out by re-listening or rewatching this. So Simon, for anyone that wants to say get involved, follow your journey, reach out to you to say buy your book, to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way for people to follow your journey and to connect with you, my friend?
Thank you so much, Ryan, and also for this conversation. The best way to connect with me is either on LinkedIn, so you can just search Simon Alexander Ong, or here on Instagram, my handle is @SimonAlexanderO. If you want to purchase a copy of my book, Energize, the link is in my bio. And the final question I would leave you with, I'm all about action, as we've discussed in this conversation. It's all about focusing on what you can do today. So the question I will leave the viewers here today is this: how much longer will you avoid what you are capable of in order to continue with what you are comfortable with?
Wow. Wow. I think everybody needs to really ask themselves that question. Can you repeat it once more, just for anyone that's listening right now? Because that was such a
Sure. So the
powerful
question
question. Listen
is
up, people.
this: how much longer will you avoid doing what you are capable of in order to continue with what you are comfortable with?
It's such food for thought. Wow. Thank you so much, Simon, my friend. And yeah, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure, and I really do appreciate you for being here.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much. And I hope you have enjoyed listening to this conversation.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everybody, for coming on. And I'm going to see you on the next live. Bye-bye, people. Bye-bye, Simon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.